Part 130. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1291. Manbao looked left and right, and seeing that no one was paying attention, he asked in a low voice, "Are other masters like His Majesty and the Crown Prince?" Aunt Chang. Manbao learned something from her silence. She sighed and nodded to show that she understood. Aunt Chang became even more silent upon seeing this. Aunt Chang arranged for a carriage to send Manbao back to Changqing Lane. She didn't see the pot of flowers that she was admiring until she got home. The flower pot was quite beautiful, but the leaves looked familiar to her. While hesitating, Keek said, "Yes, it is the chrysanthemum you sold to the Zhu Wangfu before the Mid-Autumn Festival." Manbao moved the flower to Bai Shan's door, took out the fox fur and looked at it, and decided to find a shop to make a fox fur when he was free. Bai Shan and Bai Erlang came back at the point of dinner. As soon as they entered the yard, they shouted starved to death. Manbao poured a glass of warm water for the two of them, drank them all in one go, and then asked while touching their stomachs, "Have dinner yet?" Manbao asked, "Have you, the imperial child supervisor, lost your lunch?" "It's cold and hungry, and today I'm especially mindful," Bai Shan said. "We're going to bring some snacks to school tomorrow." He took out 2 books from the book basket, and a stack of paper for Manbao to read. "We found a lot of books today, but unfortunately there are not many records about the Imperial Physician's office in the Imperial College, and they are very trivial and scattered." "How are you talking with the Queen today?" Manbao said, "I have already rejected her, and she also promised to let Lu Yuna follow me to study for the time being." She flipped through the stack of paper in her hand, and said in surprise, "You guys have found a lot of things, and you even remembered the source." Bai Erlang slipped to Mr. Zhuang's table and touched a piece of dessert to nibble on. "Of course, not only us, but also Yin He, Brother Feng, Brother Yi, and Ji Hao all helped find it." Manbao tilted his head to look at Bai Shan. "Bai Shandao, I only asked Yin or help. I just met Senior Brother Feng and Senior Brother Yi in the library, and they helped him find it. As for Ji Hao, he didn't even know why he followed him to the library. He wasn't someone who liked to read books." Manbao didn't pay attention to Ji Hao either. She carefully looked at the relevant information copied down on the paper. Before she could read one, the kitchen brought the food, and everyone had to eat first. Bai Shan rolled up his sleeves to wash his hands, and stopped when he passed his room. He looked down at the flower pot in the middle of the door of his room. After a pause, he bent down and moved it to the study before going to wash his hands. When he came back, he couldn't help but ask Manbao, "Did you put the pot of flowers at the door of my room?" Manbao nodded. "How to put it outside? What if it freezes to death?" Manbao said, "No, it is very strong. That's chrysanthemum. The leaves are still so green in winter." Manbao nodded heavily, "Yes, a mutant chrysanthemum." Bai Erlang asked, "Isn't that very valuable? How do you send him?" Manbao raised his eyelids and asked, "Do you want it? If someone else sends it to me later, I'll give you a pot too." She turned her head and said to Bai Shan, "You crow mouth, so this first pot is given to you." Bai Erlang still had a question in his head, and Bai Shan had already reacted. This potted flower was a variant of chrysanthemum that Manbao originally sold. Mr. Zhuang also reacted, shook his head and smiled. "This is the cause and effect. God is still fair." Manbao pouted, but did not refute, but ate a big bowl of rice angrily. Bai Erlang also understood and snickered. Bai Shan, however, found it very interesting. After eating, he squatted in the study and looked at the pot of chrysanthemum for a long time, thinking thoughtfully, "The other chrysanthemums can only bloom until early winter at most, and now it's late winter. Why are its leaves still like this? Green and green." Sitting in front of his desk, Man continued to read the information they copied back, and then said, "It's a variant, It's cold resistant. Bai Shan, then prune the branches and cultivate them, won't you be able to enjoy chrysanthemums in winter? Don't think about it, the gene of this flower is unstable. It has bloomed once, and the second time it blooms, I don't know what it will look like. I heard it's ugly. This is not the first time Bai Shan has heard the word gene from Manbao, and he knows what a gene is. Hearing the words, he said, then prune and graft, and see if we can grow other flowers. He said, if it is possible, there will be many flowers to enjoy in winter in the future. Manbao turned over a piece of paper and said indifferently, then you can take it, it's better to take edible flowers, there are no green leafy vegetables to eat in winter, and the vegetables in the cellar are tired of eating, look at can you pick up the vegetables and plant them? After talking about this, Manbao turned his head to look at the chrysanthemum leaves on the ground, and thought, if the green vegetables in winter can grow like this pot of chrysanthemum, then we won't have to worry about running out of vegetables to eat. Bai Shan also looked at the pot of chrysanthemum in front of him and pondered, is the palace originally kept in the conservatory, or outside? Manbao, oh, I forgot to ask. Because chrysanthemums were not valuable in Keek's place, she didn't take it to heart. When Bai Shan heard this, he simply moved the flower pot to the yard, found a place that could shelter from the wind and snow, and decided to prove it with an experiment. Xiang Mingxiu was about to close the ventilated window, and when he saw it, he couldn't help shaking his head. Xiang Chao still didn't dare to let Xiang Mingxiu stand for too long, so he hurriedly went to help close the window, and when he saw it, he couldn't help but marvel, why is such a precious pot of chrysanthemum placed outside to catch the cold? Xiang Ming learned, this is where we are inferior to them. Xiang Chao was puzzled, but Xiang Mingxiu didn't answer any more. He supported Xiang Chao back on the bed and continued his rehabilitation. He can barely move 2 steps now, but he is still not stable, and he does not dare to go too far, so he can only slowly recover. Bai Shan put the flower pots away and went back to the study to sort out the materials with Manbao, and by the way, he talked about the plans and ideas for the imperial physician's office. Bai Erlang sat at his desk, lit a candle and buried himself in writing a biography. Today, he was pressed by Bai Shan to do white labor, and he hadn't had time to write it yet. Mr. Zhuang was also in the study, occasionally answering questions from Bai Shan and Manbao, such as how the General Staff Department and the Household Department work, and how to report the addition of new staff to the Imperial Physician's office. Mr. Zhuang saw that they had more and more proposals, and gradually turned away. In the end, it was not like he was going to set up a maternity hospital, but rather a medical school. After all, he is still a child, and he only goes to and from school on weekdays, so he treats all functional departments the same as in school. He shook his head and smiled, interrupting their various questions and saying, according to your plan, it's like running a school. There are ready-made examples of this, and the Imperial College is the one. Bai Shan's eyes lit up and asked, do you think the court will agree, sir? See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1292. Mr. Zhuang never thought that the court would agree. The reason why he asked them to check the information and learn how to write the table was just to let them have something to do and take the opportunity to learn more. Just like the articles they wrote when they were young, they went to participate in labor and came back. They deleted, edited, and rewritten an article for 2 years. In the end, even if it was handed over to the magistrate Fu, wouldn't it still be over? The affairs of the imperial court have never been so simple. They have experienced a lot, and they will naturally understand without him saying it. Mr. Zhuang felt that after this time, the 3 of them would not ask them again, and they would be able to figure it out on their own. So he pressed the question leisurely and smiled slightly, you will know if you have done it. Bai Shan and Manbao thought so too, so they continued to turn around to sort out the information. Mr. Zhuang got up and walked behind Bai Erlang, looked at the manuscript he wrote, shook his head and tapped him on the shoulder. Have you read the class you are going to take tomorrow? Although the biography is interesting, you should not neglect your studies. Or be careful to accept these for you as a teacher. After Bai Erlang wrote a draft silently, he took out the book and read it. Bai Shan and Man Bao couldn't help but bow their heads and hold back their laughter when they saw it, and they couldn't be happier. In fact, Bai Erlang couldn't keep up with his homework at the beginning of the Taixue, but fortunately, all of their classes were admitted by Anian Ho, and they were not as good as the students in other classes. The gentleman who taught the class lightened the difficulty. Bai Erlang's grades in the entire class were not bad, and he was making steady progress. Although it is still not comparable to the students who were admitted in the big exam, it is still much better than when they first entered. Especially Bai Erlang, although he snorted a little, he is still a group who is more willing to learn in school, so the gentlemen still like him very much. Specifically, in every class, teachers love to answer questions by naming his name. And Bai Shan has already become one of the most well-known figures in the whole school in the Qiuzixu, not only because of his suing the imperial court in the palace, squatting in prison, and defeating a prince, but also because of his achievements. 80% of the students in Qiuzixu were admitted by Anian, and only 20% were admitted by the big exam. Although there are many outstanding students among Anian students, they are still mixed, so Bai Shan surpassed the students of the same period at a speed visible to the naked eye, and became recognized as the best group of students. Since it is so brilliant, it is naturally very eye-catching. The students of Qiuzixu always love to spread the gossip, so a few of them went to the library the day before to find records about the Imperial Medical Office. The next day, many ministers knew about it. But they didn't take it to heart. Bai Shan and Zhou Man were in the same group. And Zhou Man is now not only a famous little doctor in the capital, but also treats the queen and the prince in the palace. The ministers thought, Zhou Man wants to enter the imperial hospital, right? Just go in, it's just a girl, it doesn't take much to give a grade 7 or 8. The most important thing is that her medical skills are really good. I heard that Han Shangshu's daughter had a difficult childbirth, so she directly opened her abdomen to take the child. Now everyone is fine. This matter has spread all over the back houses of the upper class in the past 2 days, and they have also heard their daughter-in-law chanting about this strange incident after returning home. Of course, although they are also very curious, it is absolutely impossible to ask Han Shangshu in person. But it's okay to talk in private, and the same thing happened today. The court meeting is over, and those who should go out of the palace to work in the yamen should go to their respective yamen. If you want to stay in the duty room to work, or if you want to see the emperor to discuss things later, you should sit in the duty room to read the book and drink tea. Han Shangshu finished reporting the matter and left, so the elders in the duty room drank tea leisurely, and one person asked Li Shangshu, Mao Yu, is this hospital going to be a female imperial doctor? Li Maoyu is the official minister of the Ministry of Personnel. Apart from the Taiyuan Hospital, I am afraid he is the one who knows the most. Li Maoyu drank tea calmly and said, I didn't hear the report from the Taiyuan Hospital, I don't know. If Niang wants to recruit talents, Han Shangshu should not object. I wonder what Zhao Qiuagong thinks. Zhao Qiuajing was watching the play with a teacup in his hand, and when he saw the question being thrown on him, he frowned. The matter of the Taiyuan Hospital is naturally decided by the Taiyuan Hospital. What should I do with this fun? Everyone, Zhao Qiuagong, wake up, the queen is your own sister, the prince is your own nephew, they are treating your sister and nephew now, do you think it has anything to do with it? Of course, Zhao Qiuagong also knew this, but he didn't think it was a very important thing. Isn't it just a little lady who wants to go to the imperial hospital? Entering is, she has the ability anyway, an official position in the hospital, just give it. The elders didn't really take this matter to heart, but they didn't have much to say, so they just took it out and talked about it. So even the emperor knew about it when it was time for lunch. There was no way, all the people on duty in the duty room were internal prisoners. Basically, most of the various interesting gossips the emperor heard all day came from the duty room. So the emperor asked the empress when he returned to the Taiji hall at noon for lunch, "Didn't you say that Zhou Man did not agree? Why did Bai Shan still take someone to investigate the matter of the imperial physician's office?" The queen smiled and gave him a pair of chopsticks to mix the cabbage, stared at him after eating it, and said, "It's not that she refused to be very firm, and let her think about it slowly." The emperor shook his head and said with a smile, It's too grumpy, since you want to build a maid's hospital, just give an order and let the officials make a plan for you." "Yes. When you give her an official seal, if she agrees or not, give her more money and fields, 1 invitation and 2 invitations, she will always agree." The queen shook her head and smiled and said, "She loves money, but I think she still wants to go outside, but she is not very willing. What she said is reasonable, and I also want to seriously think about how this female imperial doctor should be built to be better." The emperor nodded, no longer concerned about this matter, and turned to talk about other things. "I went to see my mother yesterday, and my mother talked to me about Yunfan's marriage, and I remembered that our Changjiu is not too young. Now, is it time to say kiss?" The queen nodded slightly. "I was going to see each other this year, but this year has been delayed because of a lot of things. It just so happens that we are about to prepare for the new year. Many of the princes of various families have returned to Beijing. I will take a look at that time." The emperor nodded and said, "She's already getting married after the new year. I don't think it's necessary to be too restrained. Let her go out to play, maybe she likes something. By the way, let her and the Han family's Wei family. A few boys move around more." The queen knew that he was interested in Han Shang Shujia and Wei Ji's family. Thinking that the daughter she had raised by her side was going to marry another, the queen sighed sadly. The emperor didn't think so much. Even if his daughter got married, she would still be his daughter. If he missed her, he would call back to the palace to live for a while. See you at 8 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1293. The matter of opening the Envtai hospital immediately cooled down. The queen no longer mentioned it, and Manbao no longer struggled to decide whether to take office or not. The two sides returned to a calm state as if they had never mentioned the matter. It's just that when Dr. Lu came to Manbao, she took her to see the shopkeeper Zhengde, and officially asked her to follow him in the Ji Shitang for consultation and study. Imperial physician Lu didn't stop him, but he didn't support him very much either. But Dr. Lu was already satisfied with this. Manbao still went to Li's house every day to see Han Wu Niangzi, and every other day he went to the palace to see the prince. Occasionally, on the days when the queen was inquiring, he had to go to the Taiji palace again to give the queen a needle. No matter where he went for a consultation, Manbao always took Dr. Lu with him, knowing that she had memorized all the acupuncture points all over her body, and had memorized all the requirements for acupuncture, but she had never formally started to pierce it. There is no way, the queen is not an ordinary person, she can't practice acupuncture for Lu Yunu. And not to mention the queen, it is impossible for ordinary people to practice acupuncture for Lu Yunu. After all, needles can't be pierced casually. At this time, the benefits of anthropomorphic models were revealed. When Manbao got his needles for the first time, he did not have these concerns and practiced directly on the anthropomorphic models. Not only are they similar to real people, but they can also report various data. When your needle is pierced, how many inches are you? You don't need to grope for it yourself, it can report it by itself. That's why Manbao's acupuncture skills can be learned so quickly and progress so quickly, because when her needle is pierced, she can immediately know whether it is right or wrong, and if it is wrong, what is wrong. But Dr. Lu. Man Bao finally mustered up the courage, rolled up her sleeves on a cold but sunny afternoon and asked her to find some acupoints on her arm and try to tie them. As a result, she found the wrong acupuncture point for the first injection. Bleeding immediately after the injection. Although it wasn't very painful, it was just a sting, but Manbao was still very heartbroken. While asking her to pull out the needle, he asked, "How could I be wrong?" Dr. Lu didn't know how she was wrong. She pulled the needle and stood aside, whispering, 3 inches below the elbow. I touched it carefully, it was true, but I didn't know why it was pierced. Deviated. Manbao pressed it by herself, and soon felt a pain on the little red dot. She didn't need to feel it, she pointed directly to the little bit next to the little red dot and said, "Come on, stick here." Dr. Lu hesitated. Manbao was also afraid. She was quite bold in piercing others, but when she saw others piercing herself, she turned her eyes away, otherwise she wouldn't let Dr. Lu pierce the wrong way. But now she found a place by herself, although she was still apprehensive, she kept her eyes fixed on her. "I'm not afraid." "What are you afraid of? Do you see where my finger is? Press it gently. Go on, don't hesitate, it hurts after you hesitate." Dr. Lu stepped forward and held it down. The needle in her hand was stabbed. Manbao closed his eyes slightly, and opened his eyes again without feeling the pain. Seeing that the needle had been stabbed in, he was slightly satisfied. "That's right, this is the right needle, come on, turn it around as I teach you." Dr. Lu found several needles on Manbao. She was sweating in the cold weather. She and Dr. Xiao had pierced each other, but they were not so nervous. She and Dr. Xiao didn't make so many mistakes when they put needles on each other, but she didn't know why. When Manbao stared at her and put needles on her again, she felt that the acupoints she was looking for were all wrong. Manbao didn't say anything, but he was actually more worried than her, so he sent her away, and when Bai Shan and the others came back, he said to Bai Shan, "It's hard, I only dare to pierce some unimportant acupuncture points for her, her body is too big. The acupuncture point, and I dare not pierce her because I can't see it, what should I do? With such a progress, I am afraid that only the set of acupuncture for the queen will have to be learned for several months." Bai Shan was curious, "But didn't you say before that if you teach them 2 more months, you can give them the queen's acupuncture? Do you know how they learned it before?" Bai Shan shook his head. Manbao said, "First they memorized the acupuncture points and acupuncture methods, and then found the acupuncture points on each other's bodies. Dare to try small acupuncture points." The prince also found a group of palace servants to try the needles for them, but she and Xiao Yunu have not been very sure, so they have not done it for a long time. Manbao sighed and said, "Fortunately, I didn't do it. Otherwise, if the acupointment recognition ability is wrong, it may cause people to be paralyzed." Bai Erlang was startled, so he rubbed his body randomly, and turned his head in a panic to ask Bai Shan, "She only pricked our fingers when we were young, didn't she put needles on us?" Manbao said angrily, "The first time I pierced someone was for sister-in-law Tiger, not for you." Bai Shan glanced at her and said, "I remember when I was young, Bai and I were sick. You had needles on us, and you also bleed." Manbao's eyes wandered a little. "That's because you are too young, the location of this acupuncture point is a bit different from what is written in the book. You see, after I pierced you, there is no more bleeding, right? And I'll give you the needles for free, and I won't take a penny." Having said this, Manbao became confident again. That's Baiji's. Yin Or, who was beside him, had recalled everything since his treatment, and confirmed that he had not been punctured to bleed. He breathed a sigh of relief after puncturing the right acupuncture point each time, and looked at Manbao, "Are you going to give me a needle?" Manbao said, "Let's go, Daji has already built the brazier, let's go to Bai Shan's room." Bai Shan went in with him, and while watching her give yin or needles, he asked, "What do you do? How do you plan to teach them?" "Man Bayadao, I plan to mention it to the shopkeeper Zhengda, put up a sign outside the pharmacy, give free acupuncture and moxibustion, and those who are sick are given priority." Xiao Xiao was very nervous for a while because of the arrival of Dr. Lu, for fear that he would be compared by Dr. Lu and given up by Man Bao, so she has been very attentive to Man Bao recently, and she can't wait to spread a blanket in front of Man Bao. Where is she going? Wait, wherever. Man Bao couldn't do anything, so in order to reassure him, he planned to take him to learn acupuncture first. Fortunately, he also wrote down the appointment maps, and the progress is similar to that of Lu Yunu. But Man Bao really said that, in fact, Dr. Liu's medical skills are still higher than Xiao Xiao's, although her contact time is shorter than his. But her wit is no less than his. After Man Bao gave yin or the needle, he moved from time to time, and said to Bai Shan, "As for those palace servants who are not sick in the palace, let's forget it, we won't blame them." Bai Shan smiled and said, "You haven't seen it, how do you know they're not sick?" "What?" Next update around 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1294. Yin Or, who was lying on the bed, was still in good spirits and continued, "The people in the palace, whether they are the inner prisoner or the maids, will all have old diseases, especially the inner prisoners. They are not healthy, and I don't know how many illnesses they have." Bai Shan nodded. "Instead of breaking the rules of the pharmacy by opening a free clinic outside Ji Shidang, you might as well go into the palace and give people acupuncture. With your guidance, they can learn acupuncture and moxibustion, and the palace servants can also treat diseases. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds?" Man Bao thought about it. "I have to tell the queen about this." Bai Shan said, "Why bother the queen with such trivial matters? You can mention it to Eunuch Wu when you go to the palace tomorrow to give the prince an injection, or just say something when you meet Aunt Shang." Yin He also said, "Sometimes these things are done by others, but it is better than the master ordered them to be done." Man Bao remembered it in his heart. When the time was up, Man Bao pulled out the needle on Yin He's body. He put on his clothes and got up. He faintly heard voices coming from the opposite room, and asked, "Bai Er went to Master Xiang again to hear the story?" Bai Shan's ears were already calloused. He guessed that Xiang Mingxiu was tired of it, but Bai Er just liked to confirm some things over and over again. Seeing Yin or his eyes sparkling, he waved, "Go and listen if you want." Yin or glanced at the sky and hesitated slightly. "It's getting late." Man Bao said, "Would you like to stay here for dinner? We're about to have dinner now." "Can stay for dinner, it may be dark. As soon as it gets dark, the fog will be heavy and it will be colder outside." Yin or frowned in thought. Seeing that he was so worried, Bai Shan couldn't help saying, "If you really want to stay and play, just stay here at night and sleep with Bai Er." Yin He said, "This is not good." "What's wrong?" Man Bao and the others thought it was normal. When they were children, Man Bao and Bai Er would often take naps at Bai Shan's house just to play. Yin He disliked Bai Er a little, but he couldn't say it well, so his eyes fell on Bai Shan's bed. Bai Shan immediately said, "I can't do it. I don't sleep honestly at night, and I will kick people." Yin or very suspicious, "Can't Bai Er?" Man Bao said, "He has a wooden couch, which is quite big, and can lie down on you. It was originally brought in the study, but Mr. Zhuang felt that they could not be too lazy, and the small desk for the three of them was a little narrow, so he had the wooden couch moved out. It has been placed in Bai Erlang's room since then." Yin He was moved, and he only hesitated for a while before letting Chang Xiao go back and tell his family that he would not go back tonight. Of course Chang Xiao didn't dare to leave him alone, so he went to the front yard to ask the driver to go back, but he stayed, and followed Daji to hide from Yin Or, for fear that his young master would have to let him go back. Yin didn't pay much attention to him, so he consciously ordered to go down and explain to his family, then went to Xiang Mingxiu's room, sat with Bai Erlang and talked to Xiang Mingxiu. Even if he already knew that the biography written by Bai Erlang was only 5 points true, and the remaining 5 points were all his own polishing, he admired Xiang Mingxiu very much. He enthusiastically asked about Xiang Mingxiu's rehabilitation, knowing that several of his toes could move slightly, and he was also very happy. But the Yin family's atmosphere was not so happy. Knowing that Yin might be spending the night away, Mrs. Yin frowned and was very sad. After receiving the news, Yin Li calmly asked her to set the meal, and helped Mrs. Yin to the dining room. "Don't worry, mother, there is a genius Dr. Zhou Xiao in Changqing Lane, or it may be safer there than at home." "It's not my own home, what an inconvenience." Yin Li didn't care. He had slept in the field and gnawed on the grass roots when he was marching and fighting. Wouldn't it be inconvenient when he was in the field? But he didn't say it, just a calm face and a very firm attitude. He would not send someone to bring Yin or back. "Young people, it's common to talk with friends all night in a happy place. It's a common thing for others, but it's not true," said Mrs. Yin, "his body can't stand it." Yin Li still said the same thing, "There is a genius Dr. Zhou Xiao in Changqing Lane. She will definitely discourage her, or she will listen to her advice very well." Mrs. Yin. In the end, the Yin family still did not send anyone to pick up Yin or come back, and even the old lady Yin asked someone to bring some food and clothes to Changqing Lane, but Yin Li stopped her in the past. Yin Li felt that this was very rude, and it would give people the feeling that your family was neglecting my son. So Yin he ate a very bland dinner in Changqing Lane without being disturbed. Mr. Zhuang expressed his welcome to his stay, and then when they went to study in the study after the meal, he also pointed out his schoolwork. Yin he raised his head and glanced at Bai Shan and the others, and saw that they were doing their homework with their heads lowered. Mr. Zhuang walked past each table, and after pointing out their homework, he went back to his place to read with his hands behind his back. He finally understood why Bai Shan's progress in Kuazixu was so fast, because he still had a teacher to teach after he left school, but his family didn't. After Bai Shan finished his homework, he gave it to Mr. Zhuang to check and comment, and then he took out the miscellaneous books to read. Man Bao was the second to finish her homework and returned to her place after she was also commented. She took out a blank piece of paper and thought sadly. She was thinking about how to teach Lu Yunu. Before today, she didn't think it was difficult. She taught whatever case she had. She usually learned some pulse diagnosis. After a long time, she would naturally learn medical skills. That's how she learned it herself. But today, after examining Lu Yunu's acupuncture, Man Bao felt that she couldn't use a hammer in the east and a hammer in the west, because although it is true that she studied medicine like this in reality, in the system, she followed Mr. Mo's system of studying medicine. Thinking about it carefully, Mr. Zhuang taught them the same things in the first few years, and it has only become different in the past 2 years. So where do you start teaching Lu Yunu? Man Bao was very sad. Bai Shan took 2 notes, looked up and saw that she was in a daze with her chin propped on her head, so she quietly glanced at Mr. Zhuang, saw that he was reading with a book, and didn't pay attention, so he quietly stretched out and kicked her, whispering dissatisfied said, "I'm looking for information for you, why are you in a daze?" Man Bao said, "This is not in a daze, but thinking." "Don't think about it, you should check the information first. The book I borrowed from the library, you should read it quickly. I will return it in 2 days and lend 2 more books," Bai Shan said. "I will be the end of the year next month. The exam is over, and I need to rush to review my homework." Man Bao put aside the clueless thoughts and looked at the book he gave, but she still expressed her dissatisfaction. "You kicked me and hurt me." Bai Shan, "Impossible, I'm showing mercy. It's winter, it hurts easily. Bai Shan, but you also wear a lot. Yin Or, who was sitting with Bai Erlang, stared blankly at the two people across from him. Bai Erlang saw that he didn't respond for a long time. He raised his head to look at him, then lowered his head and continued to do his homework. As usual, his homework was always finally completed. He said indifferently, "Don't look at it, they will stop arguing for a while." Yin Or asked curiously, "Do they often do this?" Bai Erlang said with an "It's been like this since I was a child. I can't understand them after 3 days and 2 fights. What's the point of fighting? As if he never fought them. I'm too embarrassed to type this name. Is it so random for book friends to name themselves? Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1295. The next day, Yin went to school with them, and now his health is much better. Although the medicine is still constant, and he needs to get an injection every so often, he will not collapse like before, and he is too weak to get out of bed. Manbao is also very busy today. She has to go to Li Mansion to see Mrs. Hanwu. After checking the wound, she formally said, "Okay, the wound has healed, you can relax, but you have to be careful for a while, try your best, don't touch the water. When you are out of confinement, the injury will be completely healed." Mrs. Hanwu breathed a sigh of relief and asked, "Then can I see people?" During this period of time, she didn't see anyone, except for Nanny Li, who could come in to see her with the baby in her arms, and only a girl and her eldest sister could enter the house. Because of Manbao's horrible words, no one from the Han and Li families dared to enter the house to visit Mrs. Hanwu. Manbao said with a serious face, "It's still about self-cultivation." But she didn't say that she couldn't see each other. After all, the mood of the pregnant woman is also very important. She said, "You have to pay attention to cleanliness, so don't join in too much fun." Mrs. Hanwu obviously heard Manbao's exogenous evil theory told. She shook her body and nodded again and again. However, the ban was loosened, and Mrs. Hanwu did relax a lot. Although she didn't let relatives and friends into the house in a hurry, she could finally see a few more people a day. When there are a lot of people who want to see her, she will ask people to lift a huge screen between them, thinking that it can block the evil spirits. Not to mention, it was somewhat useful. At least when Manbao came to visit her again after 2 days, he didn't notice that her wound had deteriorated. After watching Mrs. Hanwu, Manbao went to the palace to see the prince. When leaving, as usual, it was Eunuch Wu who sent Manbao out of the palace. Manbao took the opportunity to mention the matter of finding someone to practice acupuncture. "Yes, definitely don't let them stab people." Eunuch Wu was in charge of the palace servants that the crown prince found for Dr. Lu and Dr. Xiao to practice. He froze for a moment with a smile on his face and asked, "The palace servants that the prince found for Dr. Lu and the others?" I asked Dr. Lu. "They are all new to the palace. There is nothing serious about them. Some acupuncture points are not good." Eunuch Wu's heart skipped a beat, and he asked in a low voice, "According to what Dr. Zhou said, are you planning to give acupuncture according to the symptoms?" Manbao was speechless. "Of course we have to give acupuncture according to the symptoms. What should we do if we do random injections and hurt people?" Eunuch Wu rolled his eyes and said with a smile, "Yes, what the little genius Dr. Zhou said is true. Then do you only want palace maids, or both?" Eunuch Wu tentatively said, "But Dr. Lu and Mrs. Xiao are doing it to treat the queen." The queen is a woman, so the palace servants that Eunuch Wu had found for Dr. Lu and the others were also palace maids. But Manbao said, "But Dr. Lu was ordered to learn medical skills by my side, and the acupuncture points on men must naturally be learned." Eunuch Wu said he understood, and he said with a smile, "Don't worry, little genius Dr. Zhou, our family understands, and I will definitely find you all the people. Look at the timing of the injection." Manbao thought for a while and said, "I have to prepare. How about this? I'm going to take a rest tomorrow, so let's count from the day after tomorrow, every day from Shen time to Yu time, you see whether we enter the palace or you leave the palace. Eunuch Wu immediately said, it's troublesome for these people to leave the palace, I'm afraid I have to trouble the little genius doctor to enter the palace. Man Bao said that there was no problem, but said, Mr. Lu and Mrs. Xiao have no problem going in and out of the palace, but there is a medicine boy named Xiao Xiao beside me. Eunuch Wu immediately laughed and said, it's common for a little genius doctor to come to the palace for consultation, and it's common to bring a medicine boy, just go back to our house and say hello to the palace gate. Man Bao nodded. Eunuch Wu continued to ask, then the place where you see a doctor. It's fine to find two connected rooms, or just find a room, but it's better to use screens and curtains to divide the interior into several small rooms, and then put some wooden couches. Eunuch Wu knew it well. Do you need any medicinal materials? I haven't seen it yet, so I'm not sure what medicinal materials are needed, but Man Bao herself was a little confused, and she asked, I prescribed the medicine, can you go to the Thai hospital to get the medicine? Eunuch Wu laughed and said, young genius doctor is joking, how dare we bitches go to the imperial hospital to get the medicine with the prescription? I'm really going to arrest him, I'm afraid a close servant like him will have to rest for a while, not to mention those powerless inner eunuchs, once they smell of medicine, they will be transferred to a worse place, the heavy ones will be sent to Huangzhuang or the Epidemic Prevention Center, and that is fatal. But needles don't have these troubles, the needles don't smell at all on the body, and people like him, if they find out something is wrong, they can secretly use the money to buy some medicine from the Thai hospital, and take it when they are not on duty. A bowl is somewhat useful. Eunuch Wu thought about it and decided to arrange himself to be the first to see the doctor. Eunuch Wu sent Man Bao to the gate of the palace with a smile, watched her leave after getting into the carriage, and then turned around and took the eunuch back to the East Palace. Seeing that there was no one there, Xiao Niajian immediately chased after him, Master, is Dr. Zhou's injection only for our East Palace, or for everyone in the palace? Eunuch Wu glanced at him and said, Stinky boy, what do you want to do? The little eunuch smiled shyly, Master also knows that I have a fellow from my hometown who came in the same year as me. He works at Zhu Mingman's house. He fell while sweeping the garden the other day. Eunuch Wu was silent for a while and then said, I don't know how quickly little miracle Dr. Zhou and his colleagues are seeing patients. Let's put him in the second batch. It depends on his luck. The little eunuch understood, and didn't dare to ask too deeply. He was already very grateful to be included in the list. Man Bao went home directly after leaving the palace, and when the carriage entered the alley, she heard that her house was quite lively. She jumped out of the carriage and saw the door of her house was wide open, so she walked in curiously, and saw Jojo Lang and the third son carrying things home one after another. Man Bao was very curious, he leaned over to have a look and asked, Fourth brother, what's in this box? Jojo Lang, who was instructing people to carry things, was startled, turned around and patted her on the head angrily, and said, You scared me to death, you walk so silently, these are the furs I bought with others, and I plan to ship them back whose city makes money. Jojo Lang was very proud, and then he dug out a bundle and stuffed it for her, by the way, here are some fox furs for you to make fox furs. I think all the rich ladies in the capital wear this things, you also make a drape. Man Bao said, I have it, it's a gift from the queen, and it's still white. She opened it and found that the color of the fox fur given by Zhou Lang was somewhat uneven, and most of them were gray, so she thought it was not bad, at least it was resistant to dirt. Who knows that when Jojo Lang heard that she had it, it was still a rare white fox fur, he immediately took the bundle from her hand, that's a good relationship, since you have it, then take these back and sell them, let me tell you, Yizhu is also very cold, these things must be easy to sell. He still felt a little distressed before. Next update around 6 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1296. Man Bao held the burden and was reluctant to give it to him. Zhou Lang pulled it over resolutely, and he said, "One piece of fox fur is enough, and the winter is not long. Seeing that the new year is coming, it will not be so cold after the new year." Hearing that, Man Bao didn't really need the fox fur, but he couldn't help but said, "Yizhu is much warmer than the capital. But they are richer than ours." Man Bao sighed. Instead of robbing him, he just looked at the things piled up in the yard and asked curiously, "So fourth brother, do you want to go home?" "That's right," Zhou Lang said as a matter of course. "Originally, I was going to replace the fifth son, but didn't I bring the third son and the others here? I can't just leave them in the capital, so I took on other jobs. I think the fifth child is doing well in managing the restaurant now, so I will take the third son and the others to pick up other jobs outside. Besides, there are more and more medicinal materials growing on the mountain at home. This year, there are more than 20 jujube trees planted at home. So many medicinal materials have to be transported out to buy. I will definitely have to go back and forth between home and the capital, and it is not appropriate to manage restaurants." In short, Zhou Lang's reasons are very good, and Man Bao is also persuaded, but Zhou Lang is not. Knowing that the fourth brother was going home again, and he still had to stay in the capital, he was unhappy. "I have to go home, my wife is still at home, and I had agreed that I would come for half a year, and you would come for half a year. How can you go back on your word?" Zhou Lang said, "From home to the capital, it takes 9 days and 10 days to walk in this weather. It may take half a month, and you go back and forth twice a year. Don't you think it's a waste of time? My wife and children are still at home, and I haven't seen them for half a year." Zhou Lang hated iron for being weak. "Can you stop thinking about your wife and children? Think more about making money." Wu Wulang disagreed. "You just came out of the house, of course you don't want to, and what are you earning money for? Isn't it for your wife and children, and your parents? You have the ability to put your parents before your wife and children." Wu Wulang turned his head and said to Man Bao, "Man Bao, look at him messing around." Man Bao also missed his parents, so he understood fifth brother very well, so he comforted him. "It's okay fifth brother, we will go home to celebrate the new year after Bai Shan and the others finish their exams." Zhou Lang hesitated for a moment. "Will the palace let you go?" Man Bao didn't care. "It's okay, the queen's illness is stable, and the crown prince's illness is not an emergency. When the time comes, I will prescribe a prescription for him, and let Dr. Lu and the others go to give them injections at regular intervals." Zhou Lang believed what she said so easily. Lu Liaolang asked worriedly, "What about the shop?" Wu Wulang didn't even think about it. "Shut it up, let's go home to celebrate the new year first." Saturday Lang was reluctant. "Business is very good during the Chinese New Year." Zhou Lang said, "It will be good for you two brothers to neutralize your temper. One is not thinking about his wife so much, and the other is not thinking so much about running outside." Man Bao said, "Fourth brother, if you are half as honest as third brother." Wu Wulang, "That's right, it would be even better if the third brother was half as cunning as you." Zhou Lizhong and the younger ones were sitting on the side eating while listening to the bickering of the uncles and aunts, not taking it to heart at all. But Man Bao remembered something. "Fourth brother, where did you get the money for so many furs? The 2 carts of medicinal materials we brought are all sold, and my parents asked me to bring you the money from the capital." Man Bao was still calculating in his mind. Zhou Lijun, who was keeping the accounts, had already moved the abacus several times, then raised his head and said to Man Bao, "Sister, there is still a difference of 1,000 taels." Everyone immediately looked up at Zhou Lang in unison. Zhou Lang's eyes wandered for a while and he said, the rest of the fur is on credit. Wu Wulang covered his heart, and asked in a trembling voice, "Why do people credit you? I signed an IOU, and they also know that our family has a shop in the capital." Zhou Lang looked at Man Bao and said, "So what I mean is, since Lu Lang doesn't really want to go back, let's stay and look at the shop. Hire a few helpers." Lu Liaolang immediately looked at Man Bao. "Man Bao, look, the fourth brother bet me to Hu Shang." The brothers and sisters were about to beat up Zhou Lang, but Zhou Lang shouted, "We will definitely make money, you know, fur is easy to sell in Yizhu." Wu Wulang has also done shopping and knows the market very well, so he pressed him and asked, "There is no shortage of fur in the capital. Why are Hu merchants willing to give you credit? How much interest did you give them?" Zhou Lishong couldn't help but said, "Fourth uncle, the road in winter is not easy to walk if there is a time limit. If the time is missed, losing money is a small matter, but breaking trust is a big matter." "Oh, am I that stupid?" Zhou Lang pushed away Zhou Wulang, who was pressing on him, and said, "The 1,000 taels owed on credit is not only their goods money, but also our deposit money." He said, "These Hu merchants like tea very much. They know that we have tea in Mianzhou and Yizhu, so they ordered tea with me, and we even negotiated the price." Wu Wulang and Saturday Lang let go of him hesitantly, and Zhou Lang said complacently, "So you see, I made 2 deals this time, and I didn't lose anything." Lu Liaolang still hesitated, "What if you don't receive tea next year?" Bah, don't be crowed," Zhou Lang said, "I also carried tea bags for tea merchants when I was in Yizhu. I know where their tea is harvested. Next year I will be ahead of them. Go, if you don't believe me, you won't receive it." Manbao has seen similar introductions in some story books in the encyclopedia. It is said that in ancient times, people on the grasslands always ate meat and lacked vegetables, so their bodies lacked vitamins, and they always had abdominal distension and poor diet. But having tea can greatly slow down this condition, and people will live a lot longer. Man Bao, did they not ask for the type of tea? Zhou Lang, that's right, as long as it's tea. Man Bao let out a breath, and said to Wu Wulang and Saturday Lang, "It's okay, it doesn't matter if the fourth brother really can't get the tea that the Li Chang and the others usually eat is fine, and it will be fine for the nearby villages to collect more about there." Thinking of the taste of that tea, Wu Lang and Lu Lang's faces turned bitter, with expressions of disbelief. Who would like such bitter tea? Zhou Lang was very suspicious. But Man Bao said firmly, "Just as the fourth brother will not pay attention to the fur they give, they will not pay attention to the taste of the tea given by the fourth brother." Zhou Lang didn't admit it. "Who says I don't pay attention to it, but I carefully selected the furs, and I picked out a lot of rotten furs." At this time, in a small courtyard not far from there's Huji restaurant, a few barbarians in furs crowded around the brazier to warm up the fire, and said while roasting, "I didn't expect our furs to be sold. I don't care too much about that Thursday, he also wants many with holes in the skin. Tong Grentang Yanji and King Fi pills, I have been studying the instructions for a long time, and I can finally confirm that I really need to take 60 pills at a time, 60 pills, my god." Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1297. As soon as the words came out, the person next to him patted his head and said angrily, "Stop talking about it in the future, our furs are not easy to sell, and you always say that this piece of leather is broken, and that piece of leather is not good. What if you don't buy anything on Thursday? I'm just a little worried now. Is there really tea on that Thursday?" "There must be. I heard that Sichuan has a lot of tea, but those tea merchants look down on people, dislike our small tribe, and refuse to sell tea to us. Of course, businessmen don't dislike their small tribe, but they dislike the small amount of money they give. But if the fur cannot be sold, there will be no money, and those merchants who specialize in the fur business keep their fur prices very low, not to mention that they don't want any flaws." As for Zhou Lang, he has little money on him, so he will run into these merchants and who merchants because he took his 3 sons and the others to buy medicinal materials from Jishitang. When it was cleared out and passed through, there were already a lot of passing merchants and who merchants stopped behind. Zhou Lang had always been thick-skinned and cheerful. It was the first time he had seen so many barbarians when he grew up so big. The horses these barbarians rode were particularly tall and had a special air. He couldn't help but took a few more glances, and then hooked up with someone. Those who merchants not only brought furs, but also some very precious medicinal materials, gemstones, horses. Zhou Lang couldn't afford any of these things. It is still affordable, but the quantity must be very small. He thought about it and felt that he would not be able to sell it even if he bought it, because no one he knew could afford these things. Not to mention that most of these things are intended customers. Those medicinal materials, gems, and horses will be sold to regular customers, and there are only a large number of furs that he can pick. But Thursday Lang also flinched after asking about the price. The snowy road was more difficult than he had imagined. He had promised to go back and forth in 2 days, but King Xiu and the others cleared it for 1 day, and walked for 2.5 days after returning. Finally, he escorted the medicinal materials from Jishitang back to Jishitang, and he took his 3 sons and ran to the middle of those merchants to join in the fun. They are not picky about their work, they can help people drink, and they can also help people carry goods. In addition, they have a friendship of 3 days on the same road, and they are quite easy to find a job. Zhou Lang just wanted to inquire about more information, to see if there were any goods he could afford, while the 3rd son and the others simply wanted to make money. After all, they now live and eat in the house in Changqing Lane, but it's not good to always eat and drink for nothing. As a result, after squatting in Fangxi for a few days, Zhou Lang bumped into these people from the bald department. There is no way, these people are too conspicuous, because only a few furs they brought were sold, and the rest were piled up. Because of bargaining, they almost got into a fight with people in the square market. The prices offered by those merchants were really too low, and they were really sold at the price they gave, not to mention buying salt and tea, and they might not even have enough travel expenses for the round trip. That price is a little higher than the price that merchants buy from their tribe. They vaguely knew that they were being targeted, but they couldn't find a solution at all, and they were trapped in Fangxi like trapped animals. Zhou Lang squatted by the side and watched for 2 days, seeing that they were really frustrated, he made a move. He proudly said to his brothers, sisters, nephews, and nieces, "I was carrying goods for people in that square city, and I already found out the prices of those furs. Those merchants are really too dark-hearted to bully Alayudan and the others. It's the first time I've come here, and I can't speak Chinese very well, so the price has been directly lowered to less than 10%. Man Bao's eyes widened, so cruel. Zhou Lang nodded, "That's why I have the opportunity to eat all their goods." The money he brought was not much, and the 2 carts of medicinal materials seemed to be a lot, but they were not particularly expensive, and they were sold for a total of 128 taels. For their family, this income is quite good. The medicinal materials are grown in mountains and dry land. But for Zhou Lang, who wanted to get involved in the fur business, it was not enough, because counting all the belongings that the family asked him to bring to the capital, it was only more than 400 taels, not even 500 taels. But in the end, Zhou Lang used the missing tea leaves to buy the rest of the goods on credit, and the total cost was 1,000 taels. Zhou Lejun, who often kept accounts, was very curious. "It's strange, why is the price so neat, exactly 1,000 taels?" Zhou Lang smiled and said, "There were not so many, but there are still a few furs on the hands of merchants who are not easy to sell because of some damage, and the prices have been lowered by merchants. Alayudan knows them, so I asked them for it come over and count them as their goods." Everyone opened their mouths, so Alayuddin had to buy leather goods from others and then give them to Jojo Lang on credit. Wu Wulang swallowed his saliva and asked, "Fourth brother, the interest?" Jojo Lang glanced at him and said, "What is the interest? Alayuddin and I are friends. We have said that this is a deposit for buying tea. What kind of interest is it?" Everyone, "So what are they trying to do?" Zhou Lang righteously said, "This is my reputation. Do you understand?" Several people shook their heads together. It was hard for them to imagine that the fourth brother, fourth uncle, actually had such a thing as credibility. You know, in their old Zhou family, he is the one with the least credibility. Jojo Lang was lucky, and at this time he was still asking for help, so he decided to endure it. He squeezed out a smiling face to look at Lu Liaolang, and said as amiably as possible, "So Lao Lu, look, why don't you stay in the capital for the new year?" Saturday Lang was terrified, "Am I alone? After all, you bet me to Hushang. What's the bet? Before I come back, you can open a store and do business normally. After I come back, the account will be settled," Jojo Lang said, "otherwise, we will all go home for the new year. Once the store is closed, Alayuddin they will definitely think a lot when they see it." Lu Liaolang looked at Zhou Lejun, pointed at her and said, "It's fine for me to stay, Arya has to stay, I definitely can't do it alone, she has always been responsible for collecting and paying bills in the store." Jojo Lang hesitated, "Can't Liz Hong and Li Wei do it too? I want to take Lejun back to collect tea." Zhou Lejun, "No, I want to go home for the new year." Zhou Liz Hong and Zhou Li Wei also said, "We also want to go home." Jojo Lang said about them, "You are still young, don't always think about home, the outside is so good, why do you always want to go home? When I was as old as you, I wanted to run outside. You see, I am doing well now bar." Everyone looked at him coldly, and didn't think he was promising much. Jojo Lang had no choice but to sigh, "Okay, whoever stays, I will give him 10 taels of silver." A few people rolled their eyes and asked, "Come out from the public." Jojo Lang said angrily, "Nonsense, this is a public business. If you don't get it from the public, you still want to get it from my private money." Zhou Wulang was a little moved, but in the end he still insisted on going home for the new year. Man Bao is not attracted to 10 taels of silver, and she is not within the scope of Zhou Lang's bewitching. If his parents know that he stops Man Bao from letting her go home for the new year, they can chase him around Qilai village. See you at 11 o'clock. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1298. In the end, Lu Lang and his 3 nephews and nieces turned their backs and discussed quietly, and finally agreed to Zhou Lang's proposal. Saturday Lang said, "Li Zhong and Li Jun stay here, you take fifth brother and Li Wei home, Li Wei is also good at settling accounts." Jojo Lang didn't want it very much, he is far behind Li Jun. If Li Jun doesn't go back, Li Zhong has to go back with me, and he is still the eldest grandson. Zhou Lejun is somewhat complacent, but she also has her own considerations. Fourth uncle, fifth uncle went back with you, and the shop still has to buy things. Big brother can take care of these things. I've always been in charge of the restaurant's bills. I'll stay here better, and it's so cold I don't want to run around. Zhou Liwei said, "Fourth uncle, if you dislike me, I will stay in the capital too, 10 taels of silver." Jojo Lang, "It's as if you follow me back to collect tea and I won't pay you. Can I have 12 taels?" "No," Jojo Lang said, "if you have the ability, you can ask your grandfather to go." Zhou Liwei naturally did not have such a skill. Seeing that Zhou Liwei had no choice but to accept Zhou Liwei to go back with him, Saturday Lang said, "I haven't said anything yet about my conditions." 12. "I don't want 12 taels." Jojo Lang blinked and asked, "Then what do you want?" Lu Liaolang coughed lightly and said, you have to go back and convince father and mother to let me marry the eldest lady of the Chiu family. After a pause on Thursday, Lang said, their family said that they will have a child with their family name in the future. I know, Lu Liaolang said indifferently, it's not a marriage, it doesn't matter. Zhou Wulang coughed lightly, and Saturday Lang immediately glanced at Man Bao and said, of course, it's nothing to be married. Man Bao didn't react at first, but after seeing them glance at her, she immediately changed her words, and she reacted, that's right, uncle, no, my biological father is married. Everyone was silent. Man Bao stroked his chin thoughtfully, should I change my mother's surname? Zhou Lang was so frightened that he was about to break out in a cold sweat, and immediately said, Man Bao, don't act recklessly, father will be angry if he finds out. Man Bao skipped this matter and didn't worry about it anyway, but when she has time later, she still has to go back to pay homage to her grandfather and grandmother. Just one place. Lu Liaolang immediately continued the topic just now, lest Man Bao would continue to think about it. Fourth brother, just say whether you agree or not. Zhou Lang thought for a while and said, okay, but you have to give me your 10 taels of silver. Lu Liaolang didn't care and said, isn't all the money on you? That's different. What I keep for myself is called private collection. If I give it to you, it's called do share if you give it to me. Saturday Lang. He reached out to Zhou Lang, then you give me the money. Zhou Lang patted his hand and said, where can I give you change now? I'll talk about it when I bring the tea to the capital, and yours too, write it down first, and talk about it when I go back to the capital and sell the tea. Zhou Lejun couldn't help but said to Man Bao, sister-in-law, don't you think fourth uncle is doing business with empty hands now? Man Bao nodded, it's too treacherous. Zhou Lang refused to admit it, but he bought the fur of the bald department at a very reasonable price. The people in the bald hair department didn't feel that they were losing money, because during the few days they set up stalls in Fangxi, they were not only selling things, but also inquiring about the tea and salt in the hands of those merchants. Salt is very expensive, and tea is also very expensive. With the fur price those people give, they can't buy much at all. Zhou Lang didn't have any salt, but he had tea, and the price of the tea he offered was much lower than those offered by the merchants. Although it takes a long time to wait, for grassland people, winter time is very worthless. When they go back, they spend the winter in felt blankets and have nothing to do. Although they need to rent a house in the capital, they can also do other jobs to earn money. The new good friend Zhou Lang was very enthusiastic and helped them find several jobs. For example, I rented an empty car from a horse and horse dealership and put it on a horse, and then went to various lively places to solicit customers, earning a lot of money. It was also because of this that Alayudan was very upset about what his partner said about Zhou Lang's stupidity. He felt that if Zhou Lang heard this, he might feel that they were not enough friends to deceive him. Zhou Lang and the others were planning to go home, and also planned to develop a relationship with Alayudan and the others. He said, I saw that there are many good things on the grassland, especially they have a kind of stone, which is very beautiful. It is said that a gemstone of good color can exchange many carts of food. After thinking for a while, Man Bao said, I know, gemstones include rubies, emeralds, sapphires, gems of various colors, I have seen the princesses wear many of them. Zhou Lang said, when you grow up, the fourth brother will buy you one too. Man Bao said, I've grown up now. Zhou Lang, I will buy it for you when the fourth brother earns money. Man Bao wrote it down. Bai Shan went to Early Lane to bring his grandmother and mother over to have a reunion dinner together. There was no other way, everyone was busy, and today happened to happen that Zhou Lang came back, and Friday Lang and the others also closed the shop for a day off. Bai Dalan also came from the next door, and because there were so many people, 2 tables were immediately set up. During the dinner, Mrs. Lu also mentioned the topic of going home. She said, What I mean is, Shanbao and the others don't have to wait for their results after the end of year exam, they just ask for leave and leave. Let's go to Longzhou first, and wait for us tell the ancestor to set off with his father again. Zhou Lang's eyes flashed, and he asked, how long is Mrs. Lu planning to stay in Longzhou? Mrs. Lu thought for a while and said, 3 or 4 days. Zhou Lang nodded and said with a smile, all right, I heard that Longzhou is much colder than Yizhou. Longzhou is further north of the capital, and it takes at least 2.5 days to get there by carriage in winter. Isn't it colder than Yizhou? Mrs. Lu nodded with a smile. Obviously she also knew from Bai Shan that he was selling furs. She said with a smile, although our branch has been away from Longzhou for many years, there are still some relatives and old friends. They may have some connections. When the time comes, Shiro, if you want to sell furs, you can let Lu Gui guide you around. It's not just that some old relatives and friends are old, the old house of the Bai family and some fields in Longzhou are still kept by Mrs. Lu, and Mrs. Lu also brought Bai Shan back to Longzhou twice to worship the ancestors. After all, Bai Qi was buried in Longzhou, and his ancestors were also buried in Longzhou. If it weren't for the fact that some of the Bai clan's family went too far back then, Mrs. Lu would not have taken Bai Shan out of Longzhou and went to Mianzhou to join Master Bai. Zhou Lang was affirmed by Mrs. Lu, and proudly raised his eyebrows at Manbao, feeling more confident in his heart. Manbao whispered to Bai Shan, I feel that if my fourth brother had a tail, it would definitely stick up to the roof. Bai Shan couldn't help squinting his eyes happily. Mrs. Lu saw the two little heads whispering together. She couldn't help laughing. She turned to Mr. Zhuang and said, I'll trouble Mr. Zhuang to write a sacrificial form for Ziki then. Mr. Zhuang agrees. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Zhu. Chapter 1299. The prince knew that Manbao was going back to his hometown for the new year within 2 days, so when she entered the palace to give the prince an injection, he couldn't help asking her, what about the orphan's illness when you go back to your hometown for the new year? Manbao said, I'll prescribe medicine for you, and let Dr. Lu come for acupuncture and moxibustion. No, the crown prince didn't trust Dr. Lu's medical skills very much, so he said calmly, I want you to come. Manbao sighed. It seems that she met the legendary difficult patient. Manbao gave him the needle and said, I will teach Dr. Lu acupuncture and moxibustion hand in hand from today. Don't worry, she will definitely master it after a month of learning. The prince sneered, could it be that you and her have the final say? How can anyone be able to cure a lonely body? Seeing that the atmosphere was a bit condensed, the crown princess hurriedly smoothed things over. Little Dr. Zhou, how often will the crown prince get an injection in 1 month's time? Manbao said sullenly, it will be fine once every half a month. She said, it's only been a month since I've been back to my hometown, and I'm only missing twice. What's wrong with you letting Dr. Lu do it? The crown princess smiled and said, Dr. Zhou, even if you don't talk about your highness, even I don't feel at ease. It's not that I can't trust Dr. Lu, it's just that this acupuncture technique is mysterious, and even Xiao Yuan Zheng said there are many things that don't make sense. How can the crown prince, can you just find someone and let her have the needle? Manbao thought about it, then you wait for me to come back before continuing. The prince glanced at her and said, you mean to let Gu wait for you? Where did you have such a big face? After understanding his subtext, Manbao looked at the princess with accusations in his eyes. The princess was amused in her heart, and quickly reconciled in the play. Zhe Manbao said that interrupting acupuncture would not have much impact on the prince's health, and the princess has repeatedly persuaded the prince that the little girl must be homesick after being away from home for a long time, and her father has cleared up his grievances this year, so it must be let's go back to worship our ancestors. The prince finally agreed, but his face was still stinky, and he didn't agree to let Dr. Lu perform the injection on her behalf. After Zhou Man left, the prince sat down on the chair, took a sip of tea, and said with a cold snort, "She is said to be smart, but she is also stupid. How dare she send a medical girl who has only learned acupuncture for a long time to the orphan? She doesn't know what happened. Is she the first sin?" The crown princess stood in front of the window watching Eunuch Wu lead Man Bao away, turned around and said with a smile, "Your Highness, she is only 13 this year and has lived in the countryside since she was a child. It is normal for her to be simple. Dr. Lu can give the queen an injection because no one will harm the queen, and no one dares to harm her. Behind her are not only the emperor, the prince, the third prince and the princesses, but also Zhao Qiagong's mansion. But the prince is different. Even the Duke Zhao's mansion is divided into two factions, some are on his side, and some are on the third prince's side. He has been seeing a doctor for nearly 2 months. In the past 2 months, I don't know how many people have been cleared out of the East Palace. Some of them carried poison, and some tempted him to drink and have fun. During the period, the prince did not resist the temptation to eat and drink, but he regretted it every time he finished drinking, and then dragged out the person who brought him the wine. Even, the things in Zhou Man's medicine box have been quietly changed 3 times, but Zhou Man can pick out things every time, but he doesn't take it too seriously. The prince didn't know whether to praise her for her skill and courage, or for being stupid and bold. However, if the person who performed the needle needs to be changed, the prince would rather not have the needle inserted. After all, not everyone has the ability to tell if the needle in the needle bag has been replaced or soaked in poison. Man Bao, who followed Eunuch Wu out, forgot about it, and followed Eunuch Wu to a side courtyard of the East Palace. This side is very close to the gate of the East Palace, and it belongs to the periphery. In the side yard of a small palace, there are many eunuchs and court ladies standing with their heads bowed. When Eunuch Wu led Man Bao in, Dr. Lu, Dr. Xiao and Xiao Xiao were already inside. Seeing Man Bao coming in, he immediately stepped forward to salute. Dr. Lu said softly, "Little Dr. Zhou, according to your instructions, we divide this big room into 2, the left side is used by the eunuchs, and the right side is used by the maids, with a big screen in the middle. There are 4 wooden couches on each side, and the middle is separated by curtains." Man Bao nodded. Dr. Xiao pointed to the hut next to the big house and said, "This is the place for consultation." Man Bao went in and looked around. Seeing that the place was still tidy, he nodded in satisfaction and said, "Then let's start." Eunuch Wu immediately asked with a smile, "Little Dr. Zhou, what else do you need besides these things?" Man Bao said, "You just need hot water and a vessel for boiling needles. If you don't have enough needles, you have to boil the used needles before you can use them." Eunuch Wu said, "No problem, there is a small kitchen in the side yard where water can be boiled, people are ready-made, come here to see a doctor. Oh no, even the inner eunuchs who do needle testing can work." Now that everything is ready, Man Bao entered the hut and started. Eunuch Wu followed in first, but Man Bao didn't react at first, looked outside and said, "Let them come in one by one." Eunuch Wu sat on the stool and smiled, "Little Dr. Zhou, why don't you let me see my pulse first?" Man Bao went to his heart and nodded after realizing it. "Okay, Eunuch Wu, please sit down." Dr. Lu and Dr. Xiao looked at each other, they both found a reason to leave, and Xiao Xiao followed behind. Only Man Bao and Eunuch Wu were in the room. Man Bao didn't stop them, and showed Eunuch Wu's pulse seriously. As soon as he felt his pulse, Man Bao started to see a doctor and asked, "How old is your father-in-law this year?" Eunuch Wu smiled and said, "I'm old, I'm already 32. Man Bao looked at his face, and after a moment of silence asked, "Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" At Eunuch Wu's age, and an internal prisoner, how could he be free from illness? It's just that there is no emergency, but there are many painful places on the body. Man Bao wrote down his pulse, and wrote a prescription for him, saying, "You go to the next door and wait, I will go over and give you an injection in a while." Eunuch Wu looked at the pulse case on her table with a smile, and asked, "Little Dr. Zhou, can we have this pulse case for our family?" Man Bao hesitated for a moment, but still gave him the case. She knew that there were always more taboos and rules in the palace. Eunuch Wu took the pulse case happily, folded it up and put it in his arms after a glance, and then looked at the prescription prescribed by Man Bao. Of course, the prescription is also for Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu received the prescription but did not go out. Instead, he stepped aside and let the palace servants queuing up outside come in for a consultation. Man Bao began to teach the three people to see a doctor, just like what DRG taught her before. They read it first, wrote down the pulse records they thought were correct, and then Man Bao read it again, and then taught them after comparing the two. This kind of speed will be very slow, and it is impossible to discuss real patients after seeing a doctor, but because these palace people are here to test the needles, it is possible. In this way, the speed will be much slower, but the teaching effect is very good. Next time around 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I haven't been feeling well these 2 days, so the update time is a bit unstable, please forgive me. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1300. After seeing the 3 inner eunuchs and the 4 maids, Man Bao took them to the big room next door. Except for Eunuch Wu, she finished the injection alone, and everyone else lay on the bed for Dr. Lu and the others to test the needles. Dr. Lu and Dr. Xiao basically only serve female family members in the palace. In fact, apart from the emperor and prince, only female family members serve them in the harem. So the eunuch took off his clothes and lay in front of them, and they blushed instantly. But Man Bao didn't let them go out. Instead, he took the pulse case diagnosed by the internal supervisor and asked Dr. Lu, "What acupuncture do you think? What acupoints to pairs, how deep to pairs, how long to prick, and the condition is different, these are also different." Dr. Lu stumbled and tapped a few acupoints. Dr. Xiao thought about what she didn't add, and Xiao Xiao spent a longer time studying with Man Bao, so she managed to add a point to pay attention to. Man Bao nodded, and told them the correct way of needling. After scanning the several people, he fixed his eyes on Xiao Xiao, and asked Xiao Xiao to do the acupuncture first. Dr. Lu and Dr. Xiao breathed a sigh of relief, and took a step back to let Xiao Xiao step forward. It was also the first time for Xiao Xiao to have acupuncture on a patient. He usually practiced acupuncture on his own legs, or on their family members. So I was a little nervous for a while. Man Bao asked him to find the acupuncture point first. She took a look at it, and asked him to prick it after confirming that it was correct. While pricking, he also had to recite the name of the acupointment, the depth and time it should be pierced. The inner eunuch lay on the couch and listened quietly. When Man Bao touched the acupuncture points on his back, he found that his back was tense, so he comforted him softly, "It's okay, you have moisture in your body, so your joints will hurt, it will get better after a while." The inner eunuch carefully glanced at the next door. There was a curtain there, and Eunuch Wu was lying inside. Although he didn't think it should be, he still asked in a low voice, "Miraculous Dr. Zhou, do I need to take medicine for this disease?" Man Bao pondered for a while. She already knew from Dr. Lu that the maids in the palace are not allowed to take medicine casually, so she said, "No need to take medicine, you come to have an injection every 5 days from now on. Just a few times." The inner warden breathed a sigh of relief. Some people do not need to take medicine for their diseases, but some people have to take medicine. Only when acupuncture and moxibustion alone cannot achieve results, Man Bao will suggest taking medicine. Man Bao led the 3 of them to watch the inner prison here, checked the time, and twisted the needles on Eunuch Wu's body. then took Dr. Lu and Mrs. Xiao to the next door to see the maid. She has a very good memory, she remembers whose needle is about to be twisted, and whose time is up, she remembers everything clearly. Dr. Lu and the others can still keep up with her when they only deal with 1 or 2 patients, but when there are too many patients, they will confuse even the pulse case, not to mention the acupuncture method. What's more, the ailments of these inner eunuchs are very similar. Generally speaking, the acupuncture points are similar, but there are always some small differences. For example, if you have to walk zoozenly first on this side, and on the other side, you have to go up the giant hole first, and it will be stuck backwards if you are not careful. Manbao visits the doctor 1 trip at a time. 8 people get pulse at one time, and 8 people get acupuncture. After piercing, it is time to twist the needle and pull out the needle. Sometimes there are still people lying in the room, and they have to go out to get the pulse. Up. Next to it is an hourglass that records the time. When you finish piercing, you have to write down the time. When the time comes, you have to twist the needle, and when the time comes, you have to pull out the needle again. Only then did they realize that to be a doctor, acupuncture is not the most important thing, but a good memory is the most important thing. Because it's not 1 patient, they have to remember 8 patients at a time. God knows how Dr. Zhou remembers these. Anyway, it was the first time Dr. Lu and his daughter were in a hurry. Manbao finished pointing Dr. Xiao, watched her put the needle down, then glanced at the hourglass in the corner of the room, turned to Dr. Lu who was separated by a curtain, and asked, "Is the needle over there about to be pulled out?" Dr. Lu was a little flustered, and Manbao said, "Why panic, you twist this side first, and I will pull out the needle for him." She took another look at the acupuncture point Dr. Xiao was looking for, nodded, and passed by. Eunuch Wu had already dressed, except for the compartment by the maid. He followed Manbao around the room, watching how she taught people to find acupuncture points, twist needles and pull out needles. After he went back, he told the prince, "My servant looked at it. It's not surprising that Dr. Zhou can have such medical skills at such a young age. Dr. Lu is a little better. She can see 3 patients at a time. Dr. Xiao is not very familiar with her hands, but fortunately, he is smart, and can see 2 patients at a time. The medicine boy is a bit stupid, but he is honest and willing to learn, and he can see 2 patients. But Dr. Zhou can handle 8 people with ease, and he can teach them things intermittently. In a word, memory is amazing. The people in the palace who have been specially trained in this area may not be as good as little Dr. Zhou." The prince asked, "Is there anything extra there?" Eunuch Wu bowed his head and said, "There is no abnormality yet." The prince sneered and said, "Apart from the East Palace, those from the harem, if you find them, you can arrange to come and have a look." Eunuch Wu responded in a low voice. "It's been almost 2 months since he got the needles. 2 months is exactly the time limit that Zhou Man said at the beginning that it is absolutely forbidden, so during this period, ghosts should appear, right?" Manbao knew nothing about all this. When she came out of the East Palace, the 3 doctors and nurses Lu were pale, tired, and dizzy, almost unable to walk. Manbao took a look at them and said, "When you go back, you will order a blank booklet to record medical records. Each case will be empty. If you can't remember the time, write it down in the booklet and read it a few more times. I will remember this time." He added, "You guys better memorize all of today's medical records when you go back tonight, including the acupuncture methods used." She sighed faintly, "Their memory is too bad." The shopkeeper Zhengda heard Manbao's complaint the next day, and couldn't help but laugh. "It's not that they have a bad memory, but that you have a good memory." While Xiao Xiao was busy in front, the shopkeeper Zhengda said bluntly, "Xiao Xiao's talent is generally true, but I secretly passed the exam for Dr. Lu, and her memory is not bad, better than the few apprentices we brought. It would be a pity to be stronger." Man Bao asked while eating lunch, what's the pity? It's a pity that she is a woman, and she missed the best time to study medicine. Dr. Ding on the side finished eating, put down the bowl and chopsticks, wiped his mouth and said, is she 17 this year? Her memory is not as good as before. It's been 2 years, if she had met you 2 years earlier, she should have learned faster. Man Bao disagreed, 17-year-olds also have a good memory. They are just lazy, so they can't remember. If they need to memorize a lot of things every day, their memory will get better and better. Dr. Ding couldn't help being curious, did you have to memorize a lot of things when you were studying in Yizhu? Man Bao sighed, yes, the homework assigned by Mr. Zhuang, the medical records I saw in Jishatang that day, and the things I wrote down in the books when I went back to study the medical records. Overtly and secretly, she has 3 teachers. See you at 9 p.m.